MKUltra. In the 1950s, the CIA started a super-secret project called MKUltra to explore if they could actually control someone's mind, like Jedi mind tricks, but real. They used wild methods. Powerful drugs like LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, even sleep experiments. The idea was to see if they could make people reveal secrets, erase memories, or follow orders. Many of the test subjects didn't even know they were being experimented on. Some were prisoners, hospital patients, or even regular citizens. All of it was done in secret. But despite all that effort, it didn't work. The only thing they managed to do was cause a lot of confusion, trauma, and public outrage when the project was exposed in the 1970s. Tuskegee syphilis study. Imagine going to the doctor and being told you have something called bad blood. Sounds mysterious, right? That's precisely what happened to hundreds of black men in Alabama in a study called the Tuskegee syphilis study. Back in 1932, U.S. government doctors wanted to study what syphilis does to the body if it's left untreated. Brilliant, right? They selected about 600 poor black men, 400 of whom had syphilis, and told them they'd be getting free health care. But in reality, they never planned to cure them, even when penicillin became a proven treatment in the 1940s. The study dragged on for 40 years, and during that time, many men suffered, died, or passed the disease to their families. Today, the study is a major reason why we now have strict rules like informed consent, and why doctors can't just run experiments like mad scientists in a comic book. Unit 731. They called it Maruta, which means logs in Japanese, but they weren't studying trees. In the forests of northeastern China during World War II, Japan's military created a secret biological warfare program called Unit 731. It looked like a medical facility. It was actually a human experimentation lab. The victims? Mostly Chinese civilians and prisoners of war. Men, women, children, anyone unlucky enough to be captured. Researchers infected them with plague bacteria to see how fast it spread. They forced them into gas chambers. They tested flamethrowers on people. Just everyday wellness routines. After the war, the scientists responsible weren't punished. Instead, many were quietly given jobs in Japan, or even welcomed to the US. Because why waste good data, right? Unit 731, reminder of what happens when science serves power instead of humanity. The Stanford Prison Experiment. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo had a simple idea. Let's see what happens when regular people are put into a fake prison. What could possibly go wrong? He turned the basement of Stanford University into a pretend jail and picked 24 male college students. Randomly, some became guards, others prisoners, and they were told to act the part. No actual rules, just vibes. At first, it was all fun and games, until it wasn't. Within just a couple of days, the guards started acting harshly, even cruelly. They gave punishments, forced prisoners to do humiliating tasks, and some got way too into their role. Meanwhile, the prisoners felt powerless, depressed, and even had emotional breakdowns. The experiment was supposed to last 2 weeks. It was shut down after just 6 days because things got that intense. Sometimes, you don't need bad people to do bad things. Just give someone a uniform, a little power, and no rules. And suddenly they think they're in a Netflix villain origin story. So next time your group project leader starts acting like a dictator, maybe remind them they're not in a psychology experiment, the Little Albert experiment. Imagine being scared of rabbits, dogs, and Santa Claus. Not because they're scary, but because someone made you that way. On purpose. In 1920, a psychologist named John B. Watson wanted to prove that emotions, like fear, could be taught. His test subject? An unsuspecting baby known only as Little Albert. At first, Albert was chill. He liked animals, especially a fluffy white rat. Then Watson introduced a loud, terrifying clang every time Albert touched the rat. Naturally, Albert started crying. A lot. Eventually, he didn't need the noise. Just seeing the rat made him panic. Then rabbits freaked him out, dogs too. Even a guy in a Santa mask. Because in Albert's brain, all fluffy white things equals emotional trauma. Watson called it classical conditioning. Today, it's known as a great way to mess someone up for life. Speaking of life, no one really knows what happened to little Albert. His real identity is still debated. Some say he grew up just fine. Others say he lived with lasting phobias. Acres of skin experiment. You know what's worse than prison? Being used as a human lab rat while in prison, without knowing it. Welcome to Holmesburg Prison, Philadelphia, a place where inmates didn't just serve time. They got experimented on too. It all started with Dr. Albert Kligman, a dermatologist who looked at a prison full of mostly black men and apparently thought, ideal testing ground. Instead of helping them, he tested cosmetics, skin creams, toothpaste, deodorants, even mind-altering drugs. Prisoners were paid a few bucks per test. Acres of skin, as Kligman called it. That's also the title of a book by one of the inmates, Alan Hornblum. The name says it all. Human skin treated like real estate. In one study, they were intentionally infected with athlete's foot. In another, a chemical left burned so bad, skin peeled off in sheets. Meanwhile, the research made Kliegman rich and famous. He even helped invent Retin A, the acne cream, thanks to men who didn't even get sunscreen. The zombie experiment. They weren't trying to create actual zombies. But let's just say the vibes were very Frankenstein meets what could possibly go wrong. Back in the 1940s, Soviet scientists led by Sergei Brukhonenko got weird. Using a machine called the autojector, basically an early heart-lung machine, they tried to bring dead animals back to life. In one demo, they removed a dog's head and connected it to the machine. The result? The head moved, licked its lips, reacted to light. Without a body, these experiments weren't about healing. They were about control. The work did lead to better medical tech, like advancements in organ support and resuscitation, but the methods? Straight up disturbing, zero consent, high suffering. Ethics weren't just ignored, they were steamrolled by ambition. The monster study. Back in 1939, a grad student named Mary Tudor ran a stuttering experiment at the University of Iowa to see if stuttering was something you were born with or if it could be triggered. Tudor and her advisor, Wendell Johnson, picked 22 orphaned kids for the study. Half already stuttered. The other half didn't. They told perfectly fluent kids that they had speech problems over and over for months. Imagine being a confident 5-year-old, then hearing your speech criticized by grown-ups in lab coats until you start second-guessing every word. Some kids developed anxiety, avoided speaking, and a few even started to stutter, not because of biology, but because someone told them they were broken. Milgram shock experiments. Please continue. That's all the man in the lab coat said. The person hearing it wasn't a soldier or a cruel person, just a normal person who had volunteered for a psychology experiment at Yale University. And the task seemed easy. Help test someone's memory by giving electric shocks when they made a mistake. What the volunteer didn't know was that the other person, the learner, was actually an actor. The shocks weren't real, but the stress and fear, very real. The actor screamed things like, "I have a heart condition," and then stopped responding. Still, many volunteers kept pressing the shock button, not because they were bad people, but because the man in the lab coat calmly said, "The experiment requires that you continue." Psychologist Stanley Milgram wanted to study obedience. His question, how far will people go when told what to do by someone in charge? 65% of participants gave what they thought was a deadly shock. These weren't evil people. They were teachers, secretaries, salespeople who outside that room probably held the door open for strangers and paid their taxes on time. So next time you hear someone say, "I was just following orders," think twice, because sometimes the real danger isn't the person giving the orders, it's the one who doesn't question them.